All right. You've all seen that we are broadcasting to YouTube. I am starting the webinar, and we will see if we have any attendees joining us outside of the panelists. Dr. Balistraci, we have 2 attendees in the webinar with us right now, and I'm not seeing that attendance number move. So we may have a large number of people viewing on YouTube, but not joining us in the webinar.
Perfect. Well, then we will start the meeting. Hello, good evening. It is Monday, January 10th. This is a regular Board of Education meeting for the Board of Education of Guilford, Connecticut. I'd like to open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and welcome you to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you for all who are joining us tonight. I'm going to ask for action on the minutes of 3 meetings that happened in December. I'm first going to ask for a motion to approve the December 8th, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Ed executive session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Terrific. Any comments, corrections? None. And just a reminder, particularly for newer members, if you were not present at the meeting, I will ask for those in favor, those opposed of approval, and abstentions if appropriate. So obviously, if you're not part or in attendance at a particular meeting, let's note that for the record. So I've heard a motion and a second to approve the special meeting of Wednesday, December 8th. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
I'm seeing Dick, Kristen, Jen, Arnold, John, Moira, and myself. Any opposed? None. Any abstentions? Okay. And Note was not able to attend, so for the minute taker, just noting that. May I have a motion to accept the minutes for the special meeting executive session? This was a board self-evaluation meeting that happened on Saturday, December 11th. Is there a motion to approve those moves? Great. Second?
Second.
Excellent. Arnold, thank you. I do have one correction. Christy Faulkner was in fact in attendance at this meeting, but I don't see her name noted. Are there any other corrections to these minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and I will acknowledge. Dick, Kristen, Jennifer, Arnold, John, Moira, Noel, and myself. So that is a unanimous vote of the 8 of us in the meeting right now. All right, thank you. I'm now going to ask for a motion to accept the December 13th regular Board of Education meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Kristen. Any corrections or comments on these minutes? Go ahead, Moira.
It's a correction to a correction. So it's first page under 3.1. We had a correction from last month, page 6, item 12.5, third line. ASBC scores should read ESBC scores. It should be SBAC, SBAC. So I think just in Terry noting the corrections just got the nomenclature wrong. So it's just SBAC scores.
Right.
That's it.
Excellent. I am going to put a pause. It looks like one of our members is having trouble joining the meeting. Could someone resend Christy the panelist email so she can join us, please?
That's Casey, Katie, I'll take care of that.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate it. Okay, sorry. So we had that one correction. Any others? I had two, if I might. I'm going to start with a simple one. On page 7, it was in the middle of the report of comment by Mr. Maizano. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down. Students will be asked to required. It was a question he asked. He asked if students will be. I think we cross out. It's just a repetitive comment here, so I think we cross out asked to. Dr. Freeman, do you have a different recall of how that?
No,
Or
I'm
you
sorry,
didn't
Dr. Balistracci, that sounds accurate.
Okay, so asked if asked to. It's just, again, it's
Yes.
simply a sentence that has a few too many words.
Yes.
And then on page 2, under number 6, communications, I'm finding the second sentence, and I'm quite sure I said things in a way that were quite hard to record. The second sentence in my comments, she noted that. I'm going to ask that with the quality approach to providing be removed, and under social science and social studies add for increased quality instruction, so that the sentence reads, she noted that Mr. Hamill is watching that the schedule and approach to course offerings of longer class periods for science and social studies for increased quality instruction are balanced appropriately. Does that sound like a reasonable? I see a couple of head nods. All right. Are there any other corrections on these minutes? Okay, hearing none. There is a motion and a second. I'm going to ask for a vote to approve the minutes as corrected. Please raise your hand and I will count now that we're on Zoom. Dick, Kristen, Jen, Arnold, John, Moira, Christy, Katie. All right. Any against or abstentions? Did I miss saying anyone who voted in favor? Oh, no, sorry. My apologies. Please forgive me. I'm getting used again to Zoom and boxes, which sometimes move in the middle of speaking. Excellent. All right. We are now up to the public forum for topics on the board agenda. If a member of the public is interested in addressing the board during this period, we ask that you put your name and address in the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of this link. After doing so, Dr. Freeman will alert me to the fact that there is someone there who wishes to address the board in public forum on an agenda topic. So I'm going to invite anyone interested to do that now.
And thank you, Dr. Balistracci, but there are currently there is nobody waiting in the queue to deliver public comment at this time.
All right. So no public comment at this time. Next, then, I'm going to turn to Ms. Peck and ask her for a review and to lead us through the approval of expenditures for the month of December 2021.
Okay, great, thank you. So our expenditures for the month of December was $6,609,325. That puts us at 47% of the budget, which is a tiny bit higher than it was last year, but not by much. So we're right on target with where we were as compared with last year. Noteworthy items, salaries in December were higher. And that is because we actually had an extra pay cycle in December, just the way that the month fell. We happened to have an extra third payment cycle or salary cycle. So that's where that is looking a little bit high. Employee benefits are right in line with where they're supposed to be. Purchased services are a little higher than the previous year, and that is largely due to one specific item where we are making a video to help incentivize folks to join our district as teachers. So that's part of a grant that we should actually get reimbursed for, but right now that line item is looking a little bit higher. Tuition, we are still running a little bit lower than last year, which is great news, but we are going to just wait before we get too excited about that. Supplies and materials, we're a little high on supplies and materials by about 100,000, which is almost entirely due to requirements because of COVID. We've had to spend extra money on masks, on tent heaters, on cleaning supplies. So had it not been for a few unbudgeted items regarding COVID that we are continuing to have to monitor this year, we would be right on target with supplies and materials as well. Otherwise, capital, we are fine. Transportation, we're doing well. We're a tiny tad higher than last year, but of course we're using more buses than we were last year since we are in school 5 days a week. And we went through the warrant. The total payments for the month on the warrant was $2,617,901.95. We covered the warrant extensively in our operations committee meeting. So at this point, I would like to ask first if anyone on the board has any additional questions about December's financial report. Okay, seeing none, I would ask the board for a motion to accept December 2021's financial report as presented.
So Ms. Peck, are you making that motion?
Do I make it or do I ask for it?
You can either make it or I will ask for it. Go right ahead.
I'll make it. I'm making a motion
Excellent.
to accept.
Thank you so much. Is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. As Mrs. Peck noted, we talked about this extensively in the operations committee meeting, which happened just prior to this and was live streamed. Any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand and I will go through. Myself, Kristen, Jennifer, Arnold, Moira, 5, John, 6, Christy, Noel, Dick. Okay, so that is a unanimous vote. Thank you to approve the expenditures for December 2021. We are now up to communications. Does any board member have any communications to report to the board from the last month? I think we probably received a couple as we started back to school after the holiday break, some clarifications around the protocol. I know Dr. Friedman and his staff put out several emails, each of them more detailed, which was extraordinarily helpful, but I'm thinking those are the only communications that I saw that I recall for that time. All right. I'm now going to invite our student reps to report to us. Great to see you all. Thank you for joining us on Zoom tonight. We certainly hope to be back in person sometime soon. So Ruby's with us, Sean's with us, Jerry's with us. I don't know who wants to start, but I welcome each of you to share your reports.
I can start.
Wonderful.
So at Adams Middle School, the winter sports are going great, off to a great start. Boys and girls basketball teams have played close to 5 games, and wrestling has had 2 matches this year. Adams is very excited to see these sports back in action. With the music concerts, the turnout was fantastic, and Adams would like to thank all the people who enjoyed those concerts. The chorus performed at the high school, where the orchestra and band performed in the gym at Adams Middle School. The 7th graders hosted a representative for Water for Sudan virtually on December 20th. They heard a presentation from Cherry Christ and had the opportunity to ask questions. They also read the text A Long Walk to Water, where they worked with the ELA and social studies groups to to focus more on that text. And then also the Adams Middle School was treated by Voices to a holiday concert. Then with A.W. Cox, A.W. Cox is very happy to see all the students back from winter break. They are ensuring that safety protocols and procedures are still in place as people are returning from vacations, and staff has been a huge help in this process. Everybody is working on what brings them joy and to reinforce respect and kindness within our community, within their school, and in general. And A.W. Cox is also looking forward to sharing their students' progress reports with families digitally on February 4th.
Wonderful, thank you.
I can go next.
Great.
So first, at Guilford High School, students and staff are excited to be back at school as we continue to work together to encourage mask wearing, as it is still crucial in preventing the spread of COVID. Midterms are also currently approaching at Guilford High School. They have been modified this year to count as only a quarter 2 test grade rather than a midterm exam grade. And this allows students to experience and prepare for midterm testing while reducing the pressure and stress. And lastly, winter sports are also up and running with all of our teams working hard in their respective seasons. Good luck to all teams. Next, at Melissa Jones, grade 1 students created Paul Cézanne inspired paintings in art class. They used black pastels to outline their apples, similar to Cézanne's painting style. They also used darker shades on the bottom of the apples and lighter shades on the top to show the 3D form. And during libraries, students have been thinking about and working on digital citizenship and safety. Their work has included things like kindergarteners learning safety rules in their online neighborhood. And 3rd and 4th grade students also participated in presentations from Guilford Police Student Resource Officer Scott Gingras and CT State Police Trooper Susie Cecil. In grade 2, students are building knowledge about environmental issues and ways people might better help in solving these issues. Some students are making posters, others are writing letters, and others are creating comic strips. Regardless of the medium, students will convey what they think is the best solution to the environmental issue and support their thinking with reasons. And finally, at Baldwin, 2 Baldwin traditions were brought back this year that were not possible last year. First is the Cocoa Cafe. It has been a long tradition at Baldwin Middle School to have the Cocoa Cafe on the last school day prior to the winter holiday break. And this experience includes hot chocolate, cookies, activities, and music provided by the school band and orchestra. This year, due to COVID restrictions, the Student Council planned an experience as close as possible to the regular Cocoa Cafe. Students went to the cafeteria to enjoy hot cocoa and cookies as pre-recorded music was played over the PA system. Still remaining in cohorts for safety purposes, everyone enjoyed the event. In addition, all students and staff were invited to wear festive clothes to the school that day. Students and staff embraced this invitation, and the atmosphere in the school was one of fun and joy. And this year also brought the return of the Guilford High School Voices visit to Baldwin on Tuesday, December 21st. While it was not possible for the entire school to together enjoy the beautiful sounds, the Guilford High School Voices were able to visit each hallway team singing a selection of holiday songs caroling style. And this was really enjoyed by all the students and staff. Many thanks to Miss Allen and the members of the Voices. And finally, all of the students and staff are happy to welcome the new year and are really optimistic about 2022.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hello, everybody. So at Calvin Leet, the school community has had several fun spirit days leading up to the winter break. This month, they are bringing back the school-wide program known as Cougar Eyes for students to be recognized for making good choices and displaying positive behavior. Our PTO has also begun to collect recipes for a cookbook that will celebrate the school's community cultures and traditions. At Guilford Lakes, students are learning about winter and animals. They continue to learn the letters of the alphabet, and in math, they are working on pairs and through matching activities. In kindergarten, they're learning about different types of weather from various places around the world as an integrated science/literacy unit. In grade 1, first grade continues with their new module on the sun, moon, and stars. They are focusing on an observable pattern in the sky as they relate to the sun, moon, and stars. In math, they are exploring an addition and subtraction, and they're becoming more comfortable with skip jumping along number lines in multiples of 5 and 10. In grade 2, students are beginning a new unit called Fossils Tells of the Earth's Change. They will build their knowledge around fossils and paleontologists. In math, students are beginning a unit on a standard measurement where they have multiple opportunities to estimate and measure lengths. In grade 3, students are involved in the literary classics unit. They are reading Peter Pan to deepen their understandings of how chapters build on one another, and they will also do a rich analysis of the characters. In numeracy, students estimate, measure, and compare the masses of different objects. Students work with volume and solve measurement-related story problems. Students are also introduced to fractions, using several different models to build, compare, and investigate the relationships among unit and common fractions. In grade 4, fourth grade students have, in the midst of their own opinion writing unit that focuses on the topic of child labor. Students have been reading texts through various mediums such as images, charts, articles, and infographics to build their knowledge around what child labor is, the types of child labor, and the ways to end child labor. In math, students are using multiple tools to model, read, write, compare, order, compose, and decompose fractions and decimals.
Wonderful, thank you. A lot to report on. It was terrific. Does any member of the board have any questions for any of our student representatives tonight? No, excellent. Thank you all so very much. And you've heard me say this before, and I will repeat it again. You are welcome to stay, but we also understand you have many tasks, responsibilities, perhaps other commitments. So you should also feel free to leave the meeting at this time. And I thank you again for your continued participation and keeping us up to date on what's going on in our schools. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all for the reports tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you all. Stay safe. Dr. Friedman, I'm going to turn over to you for superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Balistraci. I've got 2 items to share tonight. One I will keep brief, and then the other one we will present at some length. I want to let the community know, anybody who was watching tonight, last Thursday evening, January 6th, the board had a special meeting. At that meeting, I updated the board on the return to schools following the winter break and the changes, modifications to COVID protocols in response to the Omicron variant here in Guilford. That meeting went on for a little bit more than an hour. I won't repeat that entire hour here. I will encourage community members to please, if you haven't viewed that meeting, to go and view that meeting. I will just repeat some of the highlights. I do want to share with the community that there are some significant changes to the COVID mitigation protocols in the district. Most significantly among those, following CDC and state guidance, we are reducing both the isolation and quarantine time period for students who are removed from school to 5 days. So students who test positive or students who are identified as close contacts will be they'll be removed from in-person instruction for 5 days. They will receive distance learning during that time. That is a shortening of that period. That is in, again, that's following guidance from both the CDC and state health authorities. Additionally, the school district will no longer be conducting contact tracing for every positive case that is identified in the school system, also following guidance from CDC and from state authorities. Our school nurses and administrators will be focusing their attention on students who we know are positive or are symptomatic for the virus. Additionally, the district received shipments of N95 masks. We have distributed those masks to all schools. Those masks are being made available to all adult staff in the buildings. Those masks are not being made available to students, 1, because they're only sized for adults, and 2, because of the quantity that we have received. I have, however, encouraged parents to talk about the importance of masking with their students at home. I have encouraged parents to consider a better quality mask that they can provide to their students. And I again want to remind the community of the importance of masking. We are focusing once again on the importance of masking. All of the administrators and teachers are talking to the students about the importance of masking. Additionally, we now have at-home test kits that are available in our schools. We have a limited supply of these. They are available in the school nurse's office, and they will be distributed by the school nurses when students have been identified as symptomatic. We're not simply distributing these out to every family. We don't have that kind of number to distribute them out to all students or to all families. And the distribution is being managed through the school nurse's office as needed. So that is happening at the schools. We expect that we have enough of those kits to carry us through a week or two. We're hoping for a second shipment. I was in a conversation last week. We're hoping that there will be more test kits that are distributed out to schools. It is important to note at this time that if your student does test with an at-home kit, we are now accepting at-home testing in the schools. Previously, any negative test needed to be provided from a lab administered test. At this time, nurses will explain to parents how to use those tests and that we will accept those tests when students do return to school. Additionally, I do want to note that the contact tracer, the table that we provide on our website for the numbers of positive cases in the school, the case count tracker that we have, that has been modified and is now being updated on a daily basis. Earlier this school year and last year, we were updating that counter weekly. That counter will be updated daily in the school system, and it is broken down by school location. So for parents who are concerned about the numbers of positives, you will be able to see those roughly on a 24-hour delay, but you'll be able to see it by day. The tracker today lists the number of cases that we were informed of on Sunday, yesterday. Tomorrow morning, that will be updated, and you will see the number of positive cases from today, Monday. And again, those are broken down by school location, so that information is available to all parents. Again, we talked about this at length on Thursday evening. The board asked a number of thoughtful questions. I would simply encourage everybody to review the communications that Dr. Balistraci referenced at the beginning of this meeting, or to view that meeting and listen to the conversation had there. We know that things are changing. We know that this is confusing. We know that stress and anxiety levels have been raised once again. We will continue to work through this thoughtfully to make the absolute best decisions we can to balance both the importance of in-person schooling with health and safety, and to make sure that we inform you, the parents, every step along the way. That's my first item. I know that we spoke about it. We had a snow day on Friday. It's just one school day ago that we had this conversation, but happy to answer any questions if any board members have any.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Freeman? Go ahead, Kristen.
Not really a question as much as a comment. One of the things that you mentioned on Thursday, Dr. Freeman, was that we parents need to be somewhat ready with a plan B at a moment's notice, because from what I gathered from what you were saying on Thursday, we may find out that our teachers are unavailable the morning of a school day. So we may wind up finding out that our third grader can't go to school, and we might not know that until the very morning. So I think it just is it's a noteworthy enough item that we should mention it again, so that folks are prepared to have a grandparent or somebody available in the event that they get a phone call in the morning that a teacher's not available to come in, and therefore their kid can't go to school that day, because we are running on such a thin staff right now.
I do appreciate that reminder. Thank you. We did talk about that on Thursday. Right now, our staff is doing well. Our staff are coming to school. We are running higher both student and teacher absentee rates than normal, but our principals are doing really well in covering all of those classes. There have been other schools in Connecticut that have been unable to open because of staffing impacts. I think many of us have seen that in our lives outside of school. Just businesses that we interact with have had to close down for a day or two because of positives among their working staff. We are tracking those really carefully. We're waking up early every morning and checking our staffing numbers the way that we usually wake up this time of year to check weather. So it is a good note that there may be an emergency notification at some time that either an individual school or the district as a whole needs to take an emergency day, not because of weather, but because of staffing concerns. We are hoping that that's not the case, but I appreciate the reminder.
Anyone else have additional questions? Go ahead, Chrissy.
Just, it's a comment again, and I know I actually did bring it up in the Thursday meeting, but I've since heard from a couple of other parents just with regard to the cancellation of the extracurricular clubs while sports continue to progress. Just again, echoing that there are parents who really value those extracurricular opportunities for social events for children who don't participate. So just hoping and assuming that as soon as the coast is clear or staffing shortages are no longer an issue, that we'll get notice that they have resumed.
Absolutely. We hope to do that sooner rather than later. Thank you for that reminder as well.
Anything else? All right. Thank you for that. So the next item then, Dr. Freeman, is the budget presentation for the 2022-23 school year.
Yes, and I am going to attempt to share my desktop for that. And Kevin, I am having a hard time sharing my desktop. It is asking me to, yeah, it's asking me to go to security and privacy and give Zoom permission to share my desktop. That is, however, grayed out in my preferences. And it says, all participants. So Jason or Linda, while I am working on this, will one of you see if you can open up the Google Doc, the slides, and see if you can share? If my computer won't allow me, I've just given permission to all panelists to share. Then one of you can go ahead and share for me, and I'll just ask you to move slides for me.
The security, you can't enable the security preference. You have to unlock it at the bottom of that.
I'm working on that right now. Thank you. I've got it. I should have it now. Although I'm going to have to quit this meeting and return to it in order to do that. Linda or Jason, can either of you share the slide deck? Or Aneen, you all have sharing rights to that slide deck. As we are working on that, I will begin the introduction. This is the meeting each year where we share with the board and the community the superintendent's draft budget. This is the first big step in the budget process where we bring the administration's draft budget forward to the board. I will present the overview of the budget build tonight. We will show you the baseline items. I always take an opportunity to highlight efficiencies, to highlight non-discretionary cost drivers. Thank you, Linda. And to highlight the investments that we plan on making. So in your Google Drive, Linda, you should have the slides that I shared with you. Later this week, the Board of Ed will be meeting again on Thursday. The Board of Ed will be meeting with the administrative leadership
Yellow
team.
icon at the top, Linda.
We'll be meeting with the leadership team on Thursday. We will be, I'm sure, focusing primarily. There you go. So if you just go to view and slide presentation, then we'll be all set. I'm sure in that meeting, we'll be focusing on the list of investments. Thank you very much. And I apologize for the technology challenge. Following the meeting with the leadership team, we have a combined meeting with the Board of Finance. At that meeting, the Board of Finance will be receiving a second presentation of the Board of Education's budget, as well as a presentation of the town budget, and there will be time for discussion and collaboration there. I anticipate there will be significant conversation about the medical benefits, and we can just stay on that first intro slide for now. And then importantly, on January 24th and 25th, there will be 2 opportunities for the community to comment again. The board has already held one public hearing on the budget, and community members came out and talked about what they would hope to see in a budget this year. But that was without any draft in front of them. On the 24th and 25th, community members will have an opportunity to speak with the Board of Education again and respond specifically to the draft that we will be sharing with you here tonight. So all important steps in the process. I remind the board every year and the community every year that the budget begins with our foundational documents. The budget design, the budget build begins every year by reminding ourselves of our priorities and our initiatives for the current year in which we're in as we begin building the budget for next year. This year, the board adopted 3 priorities that look very similar to the priorities that have been in place in Guilford Public Schools for a number of years now. First, our priority is that our schools will be physically and emotionally safe, healthy, equitable, and caring places for learning for both students and adults in the community. And they will be built upon supportive relationships and positive decision-making. That's about the general environment, the broad environment in which all students interact within the school system. Next, we commit to the fact that teaching and learning will be supported by instructionally focused leadership, subject area coaches and specialists, professional learning communities, and appropriate instructional resources. This talks about the professional environment. If we can build this environment around our teachers within that general safe, healthy, and caring environment in priority number 1, then that allows us to create what's most important, the classroom environment that is described in priority number 3. All students will engage in academically rigorous tasks in every class. Instruction will be aligned to content area standards, integrated with the principles of learning, and measured by the ongoing collection of evidence of learning and observations of instruction. Those priorities have been in place in Guilford for a number of years. Specifically this year, the 3 initiatives that sit underneath those, and it's only 3 this year because this is a challenging year, but those 3 initiatives state that first, we will maintain the health and hygiene protocols and practices to provide a safe and healthy environment for all students and members of the school community. And we have been reminded again of the importance of this just in these last 2 weeks, as we have returned from a winter break into a pandemic spike that we thought we would not experience this year. We have been reminded of the importance of masking in the schools. We have been reminded of balancing our instructional desires and the instructional practices and protocols in a classroom that leverage effective learning, balancing those against health and safety protocols to make sure that we're doing everything we can to mitigate the spread of this virus in our school communities. Secondly, the second priority after maintaining the health and hygiene protocols is to support an accelerated approach to instruction that promotes deep learning for all students. And we touched on this during the operations meeting earlier tonight. We are looking thoughtfully and carefully as we continue to experience this pandemic at how we can move students through this pandemic. We are not relying on remediation. We are not relying on making up minutes. We're trying to look at the ways in which the pandemic has impacted teaching of learning and making sure that we continue students progressing with grade level work built at grade level standards in a way that they don't stop and lose this time, but that we adjust to the realities of this time. And then finally, we have committed this year to continue to further develop a culture, our instructional practices that foster social and emotional wellness, equity, and social justice in our school community. There was a lot of conversation last year in the community about equity and social justice. There continues to be a premium placed on students' social and emotional wellness as we move through these challenging times. And we need to make sure that as we focus on keeping a healthy physical environment, as we focus on the academic learning, that we don't lose the import of those items either. So those are our North Stars as we begin building a budget this year. Linda, if you could advance the slide. In addition to that, in addition to our actual foundational areas of focus, we also talk at the beginning of each budget season about what some of our budgeting assumptions are. As we put this budget together, as we look at every dollar that we propose or request from this community, we again start from a place of safe and healthy school environments. This bullet isn't new. We didn't add this bullet in March of 20 when the pandemic hit. We have always talked about safety and health in our schools, and every dollar that we spend should improve, should not draw away from creating that safe and healthy environment. We then maintain our focus on instruction and learning. And as I've mentioned, this year, that focus is on the accelerated practices that will help us to move forward without losing ground. It's on the continued social emotional wellness of our students as that becomes more and more challenging as this pandemic drags on. And it continues to be on that equity and social justice focus. We have not set that focus aside. We have not given up on that work. We intend to continue that work. Thirdly, every dollar that we spend in this budget should be built to extend and improve opportunities for all students. I have said over and over again that I don't believe I was brought to Guilford to be a status quo superintendent. We have an exceptional program, but our charge is to always be reflective and thoughtful and think of how to improve that program, not to tread water and certainly not to move backwards, not to allow the district to revert or to lose ground, but to grow our excellence. And for all students, not for select groups, but for every child who comes through our doors. And then finally, we believe that it's incumbent upon us before asking for any new dollar to look at the existing resources, both physical resources as well as personnel resources, and be innovative and be creative. And when we can reconstruct a position, when we can utilize FTEs differently, then that is our responsibility before we simply ask to add more to the budget. And I'll talk about that priority, that assumption multiple times as we continue through this presentation. Linda, I'm trying to advance the slide and I can't advance the slide myself. And then finally, we look at enrollment. We do not build a budget for students who are not coming through the doors. Every year we look at our enrollment projections, we look at where the students are, and we try to make thoughtful decisions and we try to allocate our resources efficiently based on where the students will land. At this time, we are projecting that enrollment will be essentially flat next year. We are projecting that there will be a slight decrease, a decrease of approximately 46 students. But as I do every year, I want to remind the community that that's a decrease of 46 students spread across 13 grade levels in 7 different physical locations. And when you disaggregate that decrease at that level, it's essentially coming in flat in most places. I actually want to draw attention to the elementary enrollment from 1920 through to today. It is interesting to look and to see that at the elementary level, the declines of previous years may be plateauing. So if you look at the elementary level from 1920, when we were at 1,045 students, it has held at that level. And next year, in fact, we're projecting that if we bring in a similarly sized kindergarten, that we might in fact be seeing a plateau and that we might be seeing the declines beginning to level out at that elementary level. I will remind the board and I'll remind the community that while declining enrollment is not unusual in suburban Connecticut communities, the Guilford decline has been much, much slower than in some surrounding communities and much less than was projected for us in a 10-year demographic study that we commissioned back in 2014 that should be carrying us through 2024. We're actually declining significantly more slowly than was projected in that study all those years ago. And therefore, Linda, if you would move the slide forward. What that all comes to then, with those priorities and initiatives in mind, those budget assumptions in mind, and with those enrollment numbers in front of us, we're bringing forward a proposed budget this year of $66,076,234. That's an increase over the current budget of $3,680,334. That's a percent increase in the Guilford educational budget of 5.9%. That is, without a doubt, the highest proposed increase that I have brought forward to this Board of Education, to this community, in my 11 years in the Guilford Public Schools. In fact, Linda, if you move forward, to put this request in some context, for the last 6 years, budget requests for the Guilford Public Schools have been below 2%. In fact, they've been significantly below 2% for every year for the last 6 years. In 3 of those 6 years, the educational increase was below the cost of living adjustments for the year in which those budgets were moved forward. I want to put this budget in context because I believe that those last 6 years are important. So we will spend time tonight, significant time tonight, explaining why the request is as high as it is. But I also want to take a moment to remind the community that after 6 years of less than 2% increases, when 3 of those 6 years have been below the cost of living increase, I know that when a request of 5.9% comes forward, there's going to be response to say, there has to be a lot of money in there that's unneeded. There has to be ways to find reductions. We're going to talk about that tonight, and I'm going to point the board to some areas of possible adjustment. But I want to remind the board and the community that after these last 6 years, there's not a lot of fat in this budget. This is an honest budget. It has always been an honest budget, and we have not tucked away resources for a rainy day. There's not a lot of places to make reductions in this budget that won't impact important programming. And one of those reasons is because of these last 6 years and because of the really responsible budgets that this board has designed and brought forward to the community over these last 6 years. Linda, if you'd move forward again. One of the driving factors in the budget request that is coming forward tonight is because of one specific line in this budget. Our medical benefits spending this year is going up significantly. If you look to the bottom of this list, you'll see that it's going from 8.5 million to 10 million in this year's budget. Now, that's not an unheard of spend. In 16-17, we spent more on medical benefits than we're proposing to spend this year. The problem is that it's a significant increase over what we were spending last year. And that single increase, that one line item, that one expense, and it's a non-discretionary expense. We don't get to choose not to provide health benefits to our employees. But that one benefit is going to have a significant impact on the budget that we're talking about here tonight. Linda, if you'd move forward again. Remember, the total proposed increase for the entire budget was $3.6 million that I just mentioned. No, if you could go back, please, Linda. Could you? There you go. The medical benefit itself is going up $1,463,732. The medical benefit increase in and of itself represents a 2.4% increase to the budget. If we were only adding the increased cost of this medical expense, our budget would be going up 2.4%. That's more than any budget increase that we've asked for in total since 15-16. I just want to make sure that we look at the magnitude of that one significant increase. If our cost of medical health insurance for our employees was remaining flat this year, the total budget we'd be talking about tonight would be 3.5%, not 5.9%. It is that single item that is the single largest driving factor in the budget that we're talking about tonight. And I'm going to mention this repeatedly as we move forward. Okay, Linda, go ahead and move forward one slide now. There are areas of efficiency in this budget. There is good news in this budget as well as challenging news. First, I want to talk about the area of tuition. We have been working long and hard. We've been working for the last 8 or 9 years on building our local capacity to be able to educate effectively more of our students here in Guilford. Over the last several years, we have in fact been able to stabilize the tuition spending, and we have reduced the tuition spending year over year. From last year and from this current year into next year, we're projecting that we will spend fewer dollars on educating some students out of district. And that's a success story. We believe that we educate students better when we keep them locally in Guilford. We know that it is better for them to stay locally with their friends and neighbors. It saves them the transportation time. We believe it's a better product, and we're excited about the work that we've done, and I'm going to show you a little bit more on that in just a moment. We're also we continue to be proud of the work that we've done with salaries. I mentioned the restructuring of positions. We have worked diligently over the last several years to look at the human resources in the district and to place existing resources thoughtfully before simply adding new resources on. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later historically in the last several years, but I'm also going to talk about it specifically as it applies to one of the investments that we are proposing for this year moving forward. We are projecting that there could be some conservative retirement savings in the salary line in this year's budget. We're suggesting that there might be savings related to at least 2 retirements in this year's budget. That is a very conservative number. It's about half of what we would normally propose. And that is really because of concerns around this labor shortage. We do have real concerns that retirements this year may be very challenging to fill, and that we might not be able to fill retirements without hiring experienced teachers from other districts, therefore really impacting any savings as a result. But we believe there will be some. And then again, as I've mentioned in the past several years, the building principals and teachers really deserve a great deal of credit for being thoughtful and in fact frugal in the way that they manage materials and supplies at the building and the classroom level. We're very careful about the town resources and how we spend those resources. Linda, if you'd move on, I want to show visually what that special education item refers to. So the board has seen this visual before. The blue line represents special education budget. And we've said over and over again that the special education line item is the most volatile line item in our budget. It is the most difficult to predict. And you can see that by the up and the down that you see in that blue budget line. What you also see in this visual is that many years we underestimate the real costs associated with special education costs. The red line represents the actual expenditures of each of those years. And you could see that in years 14, 15, 16, 17 through 19, 20, that we were overspending the budget that we had allocated in those areas. What we're really pleased about, however, is that if you look at the actual spending from years 17, 18 through the proposed budget for next year, you see that that line is beginning to plateau, that we invested significant money in special education programming in-house. We continue to invest in those programs, and we have been able to catch the budget up to those programs. And so again, we've worked really hard. We know that it will continue to be a volatile line, but this year, special education costs and expenditures do not contribute to the significant cost increases that we are showing in this year's proposed budget. In fact, they were an area of stability this year. If there were significant cost increases in special education as we had in 1819 to 1920, then this budget could be even more challenging. And Linda, if you can move forward a slide again. There are cost drivers in this budget. I've started to talk about those, and I've named the medical expense, but there are non-discretionary costs that are associated with this budget that are having a real impact on the bottom line in the proposed budget that we bring forward tonight. As I've mentioned, that first bullet on this list, the benefits increase, Now, this includes the medical costs, which I mentioned were 1.4 million, but it also includes costs to other provided benefits that we have in the budget, particularly the other post-retirement benefits, the other post-employment benefits, or the OPEB trust that we were building. There's approximately $90,000 in the OPEB line, in addition to the 1.4 million for the medical line. The benefits increase is going up 1.6 million. You see that it's going up significantly more than salaries this year. Now, the salaries that I show here back out any new positions. This includes the salaries increases that are required to our some 800 current employees. These are contractual increases as employees continue on with us, and this would be to continue work as it is going now. We have a contractual increase with our transportation company. We are investing more money into the site improvement line. This is the site that provides preventative maintenance in our classrooms and living areas for our students. These are dollars that we budget for carpet replacement, ceiling tile replacement, bathroom renovation as needed. These are the necessary upkeep items that is going up this year. If we flat fund that, we could save close to $100,000 in the budget, but then we will be adding more maintenance costs down the line. It has taken us years to build that site improvement line and to keep that line growing, but this is a significant cost driver this year. Our legal costs are going up significantly this year. Last year, we overspent the budget. This year, we project to be overspending our legal budget. We have seen increased legal costs. Now, some of that was anticipated. We know that we have contract negotiations that we are engaging in. But the pandemic has resulted in some additional negotiations that were required as working conditions have changed for employees. We have an increased usage of our legal support around special education questions, some that have come up as a result of this pandemic. And we've seen a significant increase in legal costs associated with freedom of information requests that we've received. We have doubled or tripled the number of freedom of information requests that we have received in this last year, and most, if not all of those, come with an associated legal cost. We all know that fuel costs are increasing. We're seeing increased fuel costs, and 2 mandates from the state. We're now required to carry cyber liability insurance, which is a good idea in addition to being a mandate. And we also need to budget monies for school lunch debt so that at the end of each school year, no student moves from one school year to another carrying any kind of lunch debt with them. The single top bullet item is significant and moves the budget, but the last 4 are increases, while small in number, they're illustrative of increases that we're seeing throughout the budget, and they add up, right? The cyber liability insurance and the school lunch debt look like small numbers, but combined, they both represent a teacher's salary. And we're seeing significant increases spread throughout the budget in small areas like those. These individual items together total an increase of over $3 million. Remember that the total increase of the whole budget was only $3.6 million. If these items were backed out, you're looking at an increase of approximately 1% in the budget. It's the items that you see enumerated on this page that are significantly driving that 5.9% increase that we're talking about tonight. Linda, if you would move forward again. Now, in addition to the non-discretionary cost drivers, this budget does include investments that we have enumerated here for you. I have said time and time again, and I'm pretty sure I've already said it tonight, I don't believe that the community invited me to become a part of the Guilford Public Schools team in order to be a status quo superintendent. I have never brought a budget forward to this community that starts with maintaining the level of service that we currently provide. Every year, we have worked to extend our service to every child in the school district. This year is particularly challenging, and in many ways, it is particularly challenging because of the impact of the continuing pandemic. The investments that we are asking the community to consider in this proposal, and we are well aware that there may need to be adjustment or change, But as a starting point, the investments that we are bringing forward and that we are proposing tonight include a 1.0 elementary assistant principal position. As we continue to move through this pandemic, our elementary principals continue to be the sole administrators in each of their buildings. The 4 elementary principals work in each of their buildings, and they are supported by one 10-month special education administrator who moves around the district, spending a day and a quarter in each of those buildings. The idea behind this position is that this assistant principal, it would be a 10-month position, would be assigned primarily to Lakes Elementary School. Lakes is approximately 133 students larger than the other elementary schools. And that's a significant number when you're talking about schools that are in the area of 250 compared to, well, it's not 133, it's about 100 rather. I apologize. It's 100 students bigger. And it houses the district-wide special education preschool at Lakes Elementary School. The idea in this position is that the assistant principal would be assigned to Lakes, but would also float through the district so that if one of the other elementary principals had a particular event scheduled in the building or needed to be out of the building for any reason, that this administrative position would be built in to move and to backstop those principals in those other buildings. It is an extension of the administrative team. We have not extended the administrative team in a number of years. I understand that it is a request that is unusual. We have been relying on the team in place for a long time, but particularly with the additional needs that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic. Students are coming in with more than a year of lost socialization. We're seeing behaviors in the schools that we would normally not be experiencing, not just at the elementary, but significantly at the elementary. And we know that students are coming in with learning that has been impacted by the pandemic. The principals have been stretched particularly thin this year, and we believe it's an appropriate time to talk about providing additional assistance. Additionally, it is an opportunity for teachers in our district to see a path that leads to job growth and to professional growth for them. It is very difficult for elementary teachers to break into the administrative ranks, as most elementary schools have eliminated assistant principal positions. I want to be clear, we're not asking for 4 assistant principals. We're not looking to add 1 at every elementary school, but 1 district-wide would be the request at this time. We're looking at 2.4 teaching positions at Guilford High School. This is in response to a new graduation requirement. The graduating seniors in school year 2023 will be required to show 1 credit in a mastery-based experience. It is a requirement for Connecticut graduating seniors to be able to show that they can apply their learning. It's not to be test-based, it is project-based. It's an opportunity for them to show their learning. This 2.4 staff number would allow us to create a half-credit class that every junior takes and then every senior takes. Together, those 2 courses would combine for the 1 credit requirement. And within that course, the students would have the support and the time built into their schedule to first be reflective about what they've learned, think about what they want to exhibit as their project, and then have a structure that allows them to do the research, pull the work together, and present that presentation in a way that happens in a classroom, supervised and supported both by the time and by the teacher assigned to that class. When we meet on Thursday with the leadership team, we can talk about other ways to do this. This is here because we believe this is the best and most supportive way to move forward in meeting that new mandate. At Cox Elementary School, there's a need to add 1 classroom position. At Cox this year, we anticipate graduating out a 4th grade class that only has 2 classes, 2 sections, and we fully anticipate bringing in a kindergarten that has 3 sections. So this is simply budgeting for the increased kindergarten class coming in. The board knows that should we make an adjustment to that, we would make that adjustment in August. There have been years where we have not filled all of the budgeted kindergarten classroom positions, and there have been years where we have had to add unbudgeted kindergartens as we move forward. The next item is a district-wide social worker. I have mentioned a couple times tonight the additional needs around student social and emotional wellness, mental health, simply stated. This was a focus and an important need prior to the pandemic. It is only more so since the pandemic. This position, I want to note, currently exists in the district. It is one of 3 positions that are currently being funded by the ESSER grant. We could certainly choose to remove this position from the budget and leave it in the ESSER grant. We bring it forward as part of the operational budget this year because when the ESSER dollars sunset, we will have a forced choice to either end the 3 positions that are currently being funded by that grant, or to bring all 3 of them into the budget all at once. This is our attempt to soften that cliff by bringing one of the positions into the operational budget this year, leaving us next year to make a decision about the remaining 2. There's an additional special education position in this budget. At this time, it is slated to support the needs of students at both Baldwin Middle School and at Lakes. It would be a part-time position in each of those buildings. Again, I've mentioned several times the impact to learning and the instructional needs that we have been experiencing. This budget includes one additional coach position, an instructional coaching position. And when I mentioned the budget assumptions early, and I talked about being creative, in addition to adding this one position this year, our proposal also includes restructuring 2 other coaching positions. With that restructuring and the addition of this one position, this would allow us to begin to provide science support in grades K through 8. So currently we have coaching support available in the areas of reading and in math. This would allow science support, and the board has talked about, we've had some conversation about science instruction this year. This would provide for teacher coaching support in the area of science instruction K through 8. Additionally, it would extend math coaching up through 9th grade. We have not had math support at the high school in coaching to date. This would be the first time that we begin providing coaching support in the area of mathematics through the 9th grade. We can achieve both of those with the addition of just one position because of the restructuring that would be associated with 2 other positions. This budget includes the addition of 1 assistant coach. At this time, that would be slated for the girls' swim team. And this budget includes additional monies for the rental of both ice time and pool time. The school district does not own either a hockey rink, a skating rink, or a swimming pool, and yet we support both swim teams and hockey teams. And to a significant degree in both of those areas, and for a long time in the area of hockey, a significant portion of that cost has been borne by the parents. We are proposing in this budget that we move additional monies into the rentals of both of those spaces. Everything that you see on this slide totals up to $629,000. That is less than 1% of this total budget. If we were to, and this is the way I've thought a lot about how to phrase this, this is the way I'm going to choose to phrase this. And this is why these items are here tonight, because I thought long and hard about whether or not these items should be in a budget that comes in as high as 5.9%. If the leadership team had chosen to remove all of these items from the budget before presenting it to the board and the community, it would have only changed our budget by less than 1%. Instead of being here tonight at 5.9%, I'd be presenting a budget at 5%. And it wouldn't include any of these items. And in my thinking, these are some of the most important items that we're going to be discussing over the next several weeks. So while we know that the bottom line of this budget is challenging, we believe it's important to discuss these items. And while we understand that they may not all be able to move forward and stay in the budget, they all deserve to have a public airing. And I just could not bring you a 5% budget and tell you that there was no enhancement to what we would be providing this year. So I expect that these items will be a significant part of our conversation Thursday evening with the leadership team. I expect that there will be public comment on these items when we hear from the community on the 24th and 25th. But I also think that these may make a significant portion of the board's deliberations as we turn this proposed administrative budget into an adopted Board of Education budget. Linda, if you can move forward again. Each year I try to show this breakdown of what this means for staffing. Those investments break down to changes in our staff count, our FTE count. It will be a net increase to the administrative line of 1 position. It will be a net increase to the teacher line of 6.4 positions. I want to note that this slide is really different than slides that I've shown in the past. Usually this slide shows some positions that are being added, other positions that are being reduced or eliminated, and there tends to be an offset. There's no offsets this year, and I think that's part of because of what we showed in the last 6 years. We looked really thoughtfully at whether we had class sizes that we were prepared to begin reducing this year or not. We looked really carefully at whether we were in a position to reduce the special education staffing or mental health staffing in the system. We're not. In fact, last year, I had projected that there would be a 0.5 music reduction on this list at Adams Middle School. But in Adams Middle School, we turned over the entire music teaching department. There are 3 brand new members of that teaching team at Adams this year. And the pandemic continues to impact their ability to teach in ways that they're familiar with and to have the students perform. I could not in good conscience come forward with that 0.5 music reduction considering those 2 realities. So that we have postponed in this year's budget. I recognize that this is a staffing request that is pure increase, and I have not brought that in the past, but we believe that the situation calls for it. And to put that into some context, Linda, would you move forward again? We shared a version of this slide last year. Over the last 10 years, we have been both reducing in some areas and increasing in other areas. And we have pointed to this as a point of pride. This goes to that budget assumption where we have said that we're not just going to ask for new positions without looking at the current resources in place, and where we could eliminate something that was no longer as needed in order to provide something more needed, that we would do so, or that where we could reshape a position to provide a different service, that we would do so. Over the last 10 years, we have reduced elementary classroom positions as those elementary numbers have declined. They're not projected to be smaller next year than they are this year. We have eliminated elementary world language positions, and that was not an easy decision to make. That was a difficult conversation. We have eliminated middle school world language positions. We've eliminated middle school PE. We reduced middle school music last year by half a position. That was not an easy conversation. The board spent lots of time talking about and hearing comment from the community about that decision. We've reduced math positions at the middle level, and we reduced English language arts positions at the middle school significantly, reducing 6 positions in that area alone at Adams Middle School 2 years ago. At the same time, while we've made reductions in those areas, we have invested in full day kindergarten, in elementary art, in social and school social work and school psychologist positions across the district. We've increased our special education staffing to provide for the kind of in-district programming that has resulted in the stabilization of special education expenses that we showed earlier. We have invested in instructional coaching, which now includes the areas of literacy and mathematics, and possibly beginning to move into the STEM areas next year. And we have added technology integration specialists that support teachers in the use of technology in their classrooms. You couldn't think of something more immediate or more important over the last 2 years than the positions that we have added in that area. Linda, would you just advance the slide? I think it's important to note, to finish this slide, that since 2014-15, the net of these changes is a reduction in the teaching staff of 10.5. So I know that this year is asking for an increase, but in most of the last 6 or 7 years, we have done really well, even while investing in the areas on the right, in bringing down the staffing overall. We're down 10.5 teachers over the last several years. And I think that's significant. And that is an important point in why tonight's request looks the way it looks. We don't have positions that we can necessarily move around or repurpose this year to meet the needs the pandemic is presenting, because we've done this work over the last 6 or 7 years. Linda, if you'd move forward, there you go. And so Linda, this one is going to go one bullet at a time. I apologize, I expected to do that. But as I think about the significance of the proposal that we're making tonight, and please know that I am acutely aware of the size of the proposal that we're making and the request that we're making this year. I think it's important to note the overall justification for why the budget came out this way. It sits in a context of the last 6 years. Over the last 6 years, there's been no increase above 2%, most years significantly below 2%, and in 3 of those 6 years, below the cost of living adjustment. We've worked really hard to recognize and be responsive to the financial realities while providing a wonderful educational service for our students. Additionally, it sits in the context, next bullet, Linda, of those teacher reductions. We have reduced by 10.5 teaching positions over the last several years. It is impacted, next bullet, by a significant impact. One item alone that is higher than any request that we've made in the last 7 years total. The medical benefits is a significant reality. We've already started talking to the Board of Finance about it. We will talk more about it as we continue these deliberations. We will get into the details of why that is increasing, and we will talk about any opportunities we have to impact that increase. But my budget was due to you tonight. And so right now it would have been irresponsible to include anything other than the worst case scenario. But that's a significant impact, an unusually high impact from one item. At the same time that we have this one item, next bullet, Linda, we have a number of other multiple cost drivers that are coming in small ways, so that you've got a bit of a perfect storm happening. We have been responsible, if not frugal, over the last several years, paring down a budget that became lean and responsive. And now that really lean budget is being hit by 2 unusually high costs. One that comes in an unusual item, and one that comes in items that are diverse and spread across the entire budget. Next bullet. At the same time, this all happens in year 3 of a pandemic. And it happens in a time that we are recognizing real needs in our classrooms and with our students, and we have a professional obligation to address those needs. The investment decisions this year are driven by pandemic-related or exacerbated needs, as well as those state mandates that I've mentioned in a couple of places. All of those investments together, Linda, represent just 1% of the overall increase. And while I know that we need to look at reducing those, it is difficult to take those out because of the other costs that are pushing us forward. And then that leads to the last piece, because I know that this is going to be asked. If you need all those new things, then you've got to find something else that you were doing, and you've got to be ready to live without that. This is not the time to be making reductions to the services that we provide to our students. This continues to be the most challenging environmental period that any of us have experienced. And as the adults, we're struggling professionally to get through this time, but our students are now progressing through their 3rd school year that's impacted by this pandemic. And we need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to be thoughtful about building a budget that is responsive to those needs, even though the circumstances is creating a situation where it's coming in, I know, much higher than any of us would have liked to have seen. Before I wrap up, I'm going to pause here. We have been talking about the operational budget so far. I want to move on to the next slide, which shows the accompanying capital budget or the bonding request. So every year we put together the total operational budget request, and that is that $66 million budget request that we've been making. There will be a separate line item to vote on bonding requests. The total for this year is below 3 million. I want to point that that's less than half of the bonding request that we made last year. But there are significant items on this list, both exciting items and necessary items. This list includes $738,120 for much needed repairs and renovations to be made to the tennis courts at Guilford High School. Those courts are in poor repair and need to be addressed. The most significant item on this list at 1.5 million are necessary kitchen renovations at Baldwin Middle School. Much of this has to do simply with the age of the kitchen facilities there, but some of it has to do with the functionality of that area and how we will be able to improve service to students by making these renovations. A smaller item, but a significant one, is for library renovations at Cox Elementary School. Those of you who have been to Cox know that the media center sits in an open floor plan design in the middle of the school. The stacks are aging, the shelves are beginning to fail. It is an important learning space for the students. It's also a really important community space for that school, and that space needs to be addressed. Likely we will have a revised floor plan and new shelving that needs to be purchased to redo that area. I know that the board has heard significant comment on the pre-K, the district-wide pre-K playground, which lives at Lakes Elementary School. In all of the other elementary schools, communities have raised money to renovate their playgrounds. The Lakes community is raising money to renovate the grades 1 through 4 playground, but the pre-K playground does serve students from all throughout Guilford. It serves the district-wide community, and we thought that it made sense, even though we haven't done playground renovations in any of the other schools, to pick up the cost of the district-wide portion as a bonding piece. So this will pick up that portion of the costs there. It also includes what I think is an opportunity for the town. 595 New England Road, or what many folks still refer to as the old science wing, sitting on the high school property. The lower floor of that building is occupied by a weight room and a cardio room and is being used by the community member and by high school teams. The second floor of that building is essentially unoccupied at this time. It is being used for some informal storage. The central offices in Guilford Public Schools are currently located in 3 different locations. Some of it is at CO North, adjoining the tennis courts on New England Road. Some of it is in space at the back of Leet Elementary School, and some of it is in Lathrop House, where I am now, on the green in downtown. The proposal to renovate the second floor of 595 would allow us to move all of the central office functions of the school system into that currently unused space. It would allow us, the school system, to be able to use the spaces at Leet and the spaces at CO North as more formal storage, as maintenance areas, or as adult spaces, office space essentially for building-based employees like school social workers, psychologists, coaches, and the like. But importantly, it would take this Lathrop House and return it to the town tax rolls. For approximately the last 20 to 30 years, Lathrop House has been used by the school district, and the town has not been able to generate any benefit or revenue from the space in the way that it's currently being used. If we move our offices out of this space, a historic home on the Guilford Green now returns to the town tax rolls and could end up being used in a way that generates more benefit for the community than providing it to the central offices of the school system when it's not large enough to house all of the system. By putting the 3 buildings together at 595, we also anticipate that we will generate some efficiencies in heating, in cooling, and electric, travel expenses that are associated now with people having to run all over the community to meet with each other, and possibly even in the way that we staff those positions, some of the positions moving forward. There'll just be efficiencies in having our central office centralized in one location. There are architectural and engineering fees that are associated with this request. And so the bonding request that we attach to this proposed operational budget, therefore, sits at $2,891,503. Again, this request is significantly smaller than the request we brought forward last year. So while that doesn't compete with the operational request we're making tonight, we did want to note that while one budget goes up significantly, the other budget is half of what it was last year. And with that, Dr. Balistraci, I will take a breath. Linda, you can stop sharing the slides. I know that the board has lots of other opportunities to discuss everything that I presented tonight and that you received in your budget books last week. I know that it's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So we did, each board member did receive budget books either electronically or in paper. We are going to have upcoming conversations with the district leadership team. We're going to have upcoming conversations with the Board of Finance. There will be, as has been noted, 2 public forums at the end of this month. I do want to open up now if there are questions, clarification questions that people have, having either received the books or from anything Dr. Freeman said tonight. I will also say that once, as we keep moving, I am going to encourage board members, as additional questions come up, if you send them to me, I can send them to Mrs. Trudeau. And what that does is both streamline the questions to her, but then allows us to put together a document that every board member sees, so we get all the answers. I think many of us may find ourselves asking very similar questions. But for this moment, are there questions that folks have based on this presentation tonight or based on the books? Go ahead, John.
I'll just ask for clarification for myself, the board and the public. Dr. Freeman, when we talk about the medical line increase, under most circumstances with a private corporation, business, whatever it might be, you'd be shopping around, right? You would instinctively say, boy, we've got to look around and see what other options there are. What are our options in this case?
We immediately said, boy, we have to shop around and see what our options are. We work with Joe Spurgeon, who is a insurance consultant with Lindbergh Ripple. He is currently working on a request for proposal. So we have asked Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield for all the information that we need. And I believe I saw today that Matt Hoey has agreed that we need to go out to bid, and we need to see what other providers could do for us. There has been some movement already. I do need to point out that our budget process is much, much earlier than the cost process for medical insurance is. So, right, by the time we get to town approval at town hall, we'll have a couple more months of experience that may impact this. We will have an opportunity to ask for those proposals. We may see another provider that wants Guilford's business and offers us a better bid, and we may need to work on moving that. It is worth noting that none of that is easy. There are 6 different bargaining units in the Guilford Public Schools. There are some different ones on the town side. All of those contracts require that we provide, and there's different language, but it usually says equivalent or significantly equivalent coverage. We have no intention of reducing the medical coverage that we provide to our employees. We're not looking to strip any of those benefits away from our employees. But if we could provide the same coverage and not have to absorb this increase, we're looking at every opportunity. And again, I do want to note that I think some of it has to do with the context. For the last 6 years, we've done really well on medical. We've seen it coming down. The last year was a reduction in the year over. Part of medical insurance, especially when you're self-insured the way we are, is that a lot of it has to do with the past experience. And so there is a degree of luck involved. When the pool being insured is not having a lot of expensive medical claims, then year to year, we get really positive renewals. And when you've got some expensive claims and you've got some experience that isn't as lucky as it was for the last several years, the insurance companies recognize that and they build that into their renewal cost that they push forward to you. So I don't want to leave a false impression that this is Anthem making this increase up out of whole cloth and that some other company is going to want to insure us. The company is going to be looking at the same pool of individuals, the same experience over the last several years. And even though we get competitive bids, they may not be a lot less expensive than the one we're looking at now, but we will leave no stone unturned.
Dick, go ahead.
I want to amplify one of your slides and what you just said. Over the last several years, our predicted costs for medical was less than we predicted. So we've created a fairly decent reserve so that in anticipation of the possibility of something like this, we would actually potentially have some dollars that we can utilize and sort of smooth that curve. And I presume we'll have that potential option of bringing some of that money in as a way of reducing the number of new dollars we have to create.
That will be a conversation that this board will need to have with the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance has the ability to actually do that. This board certainly has the ability to request or suggest that. And yes, I think that that does need to be part of our conversation moving forward. Yeah, it's worth pointing out, right? This medical cost doesn't even get back to what we spent in 2014-15. It goes a long way to going back to that level, but it's not the highest watermark we've ever seen. It's been so good over the past several years that this now comes as a significant hit. It's one of the real reasons that I do not appreciate the annual budgeting process that we go through, right? If we built 5-year budgets, this wouldn't feel the way it feels right now. But because we work on an annual budgeting process, we're sort of paying for all the success we had compounded over the last 4 or 5 years.
Other questions? Dr. Freeman, I had a couple, and you should feel free to tell me if at least one of them might be deferred till our district leadership discussion. But with regard to the mastery diploma teachers, GSS teachers, I think 2.4 you noted, in response to this mastery diploma requirement that the state has put forth, you noted half credit course being taught junior year, half credit course being taught senior year. I assume that these teaching positions would cover those. With these projects, would those 2.4 part of people be also responsible for supporting these projects, or is that, I'm trying to understand exactly what these teachers would be doing. I mean, that's a large number of students who are going to need support, I assume, beyond just a course, or is the course going to be sufficient the way it's been planned to cover that project or cover the support of students in the completion of that project?
It's all that you just said, right? And so, yes, they would start in the junior year by helping the junior students to be reflective about what they've experienced, pick their area of interest, sort of design their project, and then give them a timeline that they would take with them. Then returning to the course as a senior, you would now then be completing that project. And so, yes, it is all included in the course. And on Thursday evening, Ms. Chaff will be able to do a better job explaining that, as well as offering some alternatives, other ways to cover the same need, right? In my mind, as you think of this, to me, this almost feels like the the dissertation proposal course, which happens in your junior year, and then the dissertation delivery and defense, which would happen in the senior year.
Okay.
Now, the students would be expected to be independent in between those two courses, but what we view as really helpful is coming back into a half credit course, a half year course, right? And then finding out that you may not be ready to deliver, and having a class and the teacher to support you in getting done and going to completion, rather than saying it is May of your senior year, step up, today's your day to present, and a student is unready to go because we didn't have this kind of support built in.
But you've answered the question. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You've answered the question though, because one would imagine, right, that there would student support would be needed, and so that is built into this proposal.
Yes, and you're right. We're talking about half of the population of Guilford High School, so that is that's the reason for the significant number that is associated with it.
All right. Other questions that folks have? So I'm sure there will be many, many more questions. I know I did initial read of my budget book, and as typical, I have sticky notes all over the place. So I will certainly be putting together some questions from the read from that book. And again, I encourage my colleagues who have them, if you send them to me, what we can do is create a living document that will allow all of us to see the questions and the answers that come in.
And if just in closing, if I may, while I would completely understand if none of you are enthusiastic about receiving this budget at the scale at which it lands, I do want to thank Linda Trudeau and Jason Bowden and Anine Crystal for all of the work that they put in. We've been meeting with principals and department leaders from every area. Jason and Linda have been responding to countless requests and revisions and suggestions from me as we put the materials together. I don't know how many hours we met or how much time went into it, but I really do want to appreciate all of them in putting it together. I don't think you would be surprised to know that it was a little more stressful this year, both because of the circumstances, but also because of the size of what we're presenting. I have never brought a budget like this to you before, which means they all had to work a whole lot harder in helping me be prepared to deliver it to all of you. So I want to thank them for all of that time and work.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to add an additional thank you to Linda for the presentation of the staffing.
We're really excited about that page.
It has been traditionally very hard to understand because we know that every year we put forth and the public votes on a budget, and there are staffing lists there, but things happen over a given school year. Dr. Freeman noted we have a higher kindergarten enrollment than usual, and so a new kindergarten teacher has to be hired. There may be shifts in courses being offered, et cetera, and it's become hard to try to follow that from one budget year to the proposal the next year. So I found that so helpful and really appreciate the effort that was put into that as well.
We were also excited about the opportunity to deliver the budget to you electronically, PDF format this year, and only create hard books for those of you who requested them on order. I just think I could be a lot more excited about both of these if the bottom line number looked different, but both of those were positive pieces to the budget build this year.
So for the viewing public, I'll say a couple of things, mostly in summary. Again, the board will meet with our district leadership team, that is principals, directors of various departments within Guilford Public Schools, this Thursday to discuss this budget. We will be meeting, and these are public meetings I'm mentioning. We will be meeting with the Board of Finance next week, I believe, or 2 weeks from now, next week. Sorry, we have a lot of meetings in January around the budget. Next week, we've met with them once already. This was before we had a draft budget proposal in front of us. This meeting will now take place in the context of having an actual draft budget in front of us. We will have 2 public forums, January 24th and 25th. That's a Monday and Tuesday, that allow the public to come to us with specific questions, concerns, recommendations based on an actual budget. Throughout that time, each board member will be reviewing this budget book, identifying questions they have, clarifications they have. During these meetings, you will hear board members discuss with each other thoughts on this budget. We will, if any updates come through the process of really trying to both understand and see if we can impact the medical benefits line, we will be discussing that. And then there is an expectation that we will come together at the beginning, again, in a public meeting at the beginning of February and vote on a budget. That conversation will include things that board members wish to remove from this proposed budget. It could include possible additions, and we will then vote on a final budget to put forth to the Board of Finance, where a process of deliberation, public comment, and voting continues. So lots of opportunities for board members to discuss this, lots of opportunities for the public to both provide input and hear the board deliberating over an approach to this budget. Any other final thoughts or comments? One question, is the draft budget available on the Guilford Public Schools website yet? I know oftentimes we wait until it is presented to the board.
It will be tomorrow. We wanted to present
Perfect.
to you here this evening, both the budget book that you received and this slideshow will be available on the website tomorrow.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. All right. We are up to number 9, board agenda. First item 9.1 is to receive for possible action an update to the 2022-23 school calendar. We just approved last month draft 2. So I am going to ask the administration to share with us the reason for bringing us an update this month.
So I'll apologize for coming back at the very next meeting and asking you to change the calendar that you just approved. But what we are requesting is that December 23rd, which is now the Friday before a full week that follows it of winter break, we want to suggest that that be made a half day. I've got significant concerns about early dismissals or absenteeism in general. Generally, the holiday break covers a week and a few days on one side or the other. To have it completely isolated to 5 standalone days with a full day of school on the Friday before, I have been told several times that that is not a good idea. I've heard from a lot of parents and a lot of staff members on this. So I would simply like to suggest that we change December 23rd from a full day of school to a half day of school. We can get that information out now, and I think that that will be very much appreciated by all of your constituents throughout the school system.
Terrific. Any questions or comments about this proposed change? I'm going to entertain a motion to approve this updated calendar if folks feel that way. John,
So
is there
moved.
a second? Moira,
Second.
there's a second. Any conversation, comments?
Makes perfect sense.
Excellent. I agree. All right. So there is a motion and a second to approve this update to create an early dismissal day on December 23rd, which in this calendar falls on a Friday. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is a unanimous decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's going to be the headline from this meeting.
All right. 9.2 is to act on ratification of the Guilford Association of Educational Support Services and United Public Service Employees Union, Local 424, Unit 90 new contract. This is the para-clerical union. We have had, as we do with all of our negotiations, several Board of Ed members who were part of that negotiating team. I am going to ask Dr. Hirsch to kind of highlight for us the changes that are, or the updates for this update to the next few years of this contract that were discussed, because it is certainly a long contract, and it helps us put into context what we're going to be asked to vote on.
Well, the contract we received is detailed and long, but there's been relatively few major structural changes. I'll highlight a few of the things, but most of the contract that we've sent for our books looks like the contract from the last several years. So the duration of this contract is from July 1st, 2021, that is retroactive to July, to June 30th, 2024, therefore a 3-year contract. Under grievance procedures, there was a need to include explicitly a reference to the union in the grievance procedure. And we clarified that the grievance arbitration is to occur before the American Arbitration Association. So that got clarified and worked out. With regard to insurance, the deductible insurance, which is always a worry each year, remains at the $1,000, $2,000 deductible for the life of the agreement. And we had a reference in there that at one point we would fund that to 50%, but that's been eliminated. We also said that the deductible contribution is prorated now for new hires based on the month they are hired. And that the employee premium contribution stays at 18.5% for this first year, then moves to 19.25%, and then moves to 20% in the third year. So there's been a movement, an increase in a marginal way for each of the next 2 years, not this first year. We clarified the dues deduction piece. That's modified to reflect the Supreme Court's Janus decision, in which union membership is no longer a condition of employment. So that we needed to make sure that we were in consonance with that ruling. With regard to wages, as you may know, the wages have sort of two components to them. One is steps, possibilities of going up steps on an annual basis. And the second component is a general wage increase. So we have the option of negotiating each time whether or not a person will get an automatic step, which is already defined, and or whether we want to add a percentage increase to all salaries. And in most cases, over the previous several years at least, we've done one or the other. In this case, we have helped change, we've helped restructure the step schedule, and we've evened out the steps so that they're 2.5% for each step. They were variable before and created some inequity problems. We solved one of the problems that when people get to the top step, they've hit a ceiling and can't get steps any longer. So that we've moved that a little bit, and that eventually there'll be a 2.25% general wage increase for employees at the next to the last step. And that is going to increase the ability to get to the top step with a higher salary. So in essence, we've negotiated a 3-year contract that is going to look a bit like about 2.25% increase per year. We've tried to make more equitable the number of steps and the level between them. And we've solved some problems, technical problems on insurance and grievance procedures. But that Jason may want to give more detail, but it was an amiable kind of negotiations, and both sides are quite satisfied with the way we ended up.
No, Dr. Hirsch, I think you did a great job explaining the major components of the agreement. I will add that this union in particular has been subject over many different contracts of being frozen on step and getting just the general wage increase that Dr. Hirsch referred to. So one of the major components was working together to find a way to solve that. And I really commend Dr. Hirsch for stepping up and being on the committee after we had some change of membership on the Board of Education. And I also want to thank Linda Trudeau for her contributions in regards to solving the puzzle of that step movement. She did yeoman's work in this endeavor. Last but not least, I want to thank the negotiating team for the paraclerical union. They did a great job. And as Dr. Hirsch said, it was an amiable process, long in duration, but it took a while to find something that worked for all of us. But in the end, we're very happy with the agreement.
Terrific, thank you. I now want to open it up to members of the board who may have questions for Mr. Bowden, Dr. Freeman, or Dr. Hirsch about this process, or anything in the contract that we are being asked to vote on tonight. I am hearing no questions or comments. All right. So I am then going to ask for a motion. We again are being asked to ratify this contract. I'm going to ask, is there a motion to do so as it has been presented to us tonight? Hi, Kristen. Okay. Second, is that you, Dick? Second. Any further comments or questions? All right. All in favor of ratification of this contract for the Guilford Association of Educational Support Services and United Public Service Employees Union, Local 424, Unit 99 contract, please raise your hand if you are in support and favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have a unanimous vote from the Board of Education in ratifying this contract, and I want to thank the administration and Board of Ed members, past and present, who participated in this negotiation. All right, excellent. The next item on the agenda, 9.3, receive for possible action approval participation in the town wellness program. This is something that was discussed tonight in the operations committee meeting. It is a proposal for consideration of a health and wellness weight loss program that might be made available to employees. It is also something being considered by the Board of Selectmen in town. It is our understanding that we are going to put a pause on our own discussion and decision-making around this program because we understand that the Board of Selectmen is taking time to look into potential other programs. Mrs. Trudeau, have I represented that correctly? Is there anything you want to add this evening?
Nope, you got it perfectly right.
All righty. So we will definitely revisit this, probably in the near future, but we do want to give the Board of Selectmen time per their request to look into this further. Next, receive for possible action, approve pre-K tuition increase. I think as most know, we have a pre-K that runs out of Guilford Lakes Elementary School that allows both of some of our identified special education youngest students and some of their typical peers to join together in a yearly preschool. There is a tuition requirement for students who are typical peers. It is a program that for a number of years had a very low tuition, and this is something that 3 years ago, the administration requested the board start to consider some annual increases. It is again meant to try to support or help support this program. We've been asked tonight to consider possible tuition increase and what that might look like, either for next year or over the next 3 years. We discussed this extensively during the operations committee meeting and came to a decision that at this point, we would entertain a consideration of an increase for next year alone, and then would spend time in the future discussing future years as we consider this program. So I am now going to open up to any proposal about the increase for next year, and then any commentary from the board as we consider that that motion.
Dr. Balistraci, if I may.
Yes.
As discussed in the operations committee meeting, after very thoughtful conversation, I think the 1-year approach is the right move as to approach all 3 years at once. For that, I would move to increase the tuition 10% for this next year.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for that? I'm seeing Moira Rader second. My apologies. I see the first hand, or I'll name the first hand I see. So there's a motion for a 10% increase, and there's a second. Again, this was discussed extensively in the operations committee meeting. We again discussed a 3-year approach, which was what was presented to us by the administration at a couple of different percentage levels. We determined that perhaps, or discussed that perhaps a 1-year approach was best, and we now have a 10% proposal for an increase for next year. Is there any further discussion that any board member would like to make on this topic? All right, hearing none. There is a motion and a second. All those in favor of a 10% increase in the preschool tuition for the 22-23 academic year, please raise your hand. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is 9 board members who are voting in favor of a 10% increase to the tuition for next year, with an understanding that we will revisit future years at a future date. We are now at 9.5 in our meeting tonight to act on recommendations from the policy committee. The policy committee brought forth 5 new policies for our consideration at our December 13th board meeting. I think we should probably handle these one by one unless the administration has another suggestion. I'm seeing Mr. Bowden. Is that a nod to handle them one by one? Excellent. So would someone from the policy committee like to just update us again on these policies so we know, have the context for voting on them tonight?
Or I'll help with that.
Thank you.
Or I'll actually just introduce Jason. Okay, so let's start with 5910, which is a policy that, of course, we were hoping we might not have to discuss after the holiday regarding masking. This one is specific for students and visitors who come into any school building. So as I think everyone is aware, we are currently still under a mask mandate from the state. So this is really just us upholding what the state is mandating we do. So policy 5910 is specific about masking. Jason, anything that you'd like to add about this specific policy?
No, we went over it in the prior meeting. Just want to note that this is all of these policies tonight are CABE, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, recommended policies to be in alignment with, as Kristen had stated, with current legislation and or executive orders.
Terrific.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to see if anyone wanted to, I would propose a motion that we accept policy number 5910 as written.
So is there a motion for this? And these are all, as has been noted, new policies. We often, as a Board of Education, are voting on updates to policies, changes to policies. These are brand new. And as Mr. Bowden noted, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education often assists boards of education with language appropriate to new policies. So is there a motion to accept new policy 5910, face mask coverings for students?
So moved.
So moved. I see Arnold a second. All in favor? Aye. Raise your hand, please, if you're in favor. Okay, that is everyone. There is a new policy 4117, face mask coverings for personnel that are certified staff. Mrs. Peck, can I assume that your explanation of the prior change is only because of it is a staff and it's a certified staff policy specific?
Yes, most of these policies are quite similar to one another. Jason, is there anything in particular in 4117 that you want to bring to the board's attention?
Not at this time. The subsequent policies related to masking, again, are in alignment with the current legislation, executive orders. The reason there is redundancy between certified, non-certified, and students is just the way the board policy manual is constructed. So hence the three similar policies instead of one for all.
Right, that makes sense. For people unfamiliar with our Board of Ed policy manual, which is quite large and completely available for reading on the Guilford Public Schools website. There are essentially chapters, and some of them relate to students and others to staff. So I'm going to ask for a motion to accept new policy 4117, face mask coverings for personnel that are certified. Is there a motion? Jennifer, thank you. And second, John, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion for new policy 4217, face mask coverings for personnel that are non-certified. Is there a motion? Kristen, I see a motion. Jennifer, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I am seeing that as a unanimous vote. The next two policies are policies titled Required COVID-19 Vaccinations. 4121 refers to certified personnel, and 4221 is appropriate for non-certified personnel. Mrs. Peck, is there anything in particular to note? I know we received these last month and had a chance to read through them.
Just again, these are really us upholding the state mandate. There's requirements that the state's expecting us to mandate vaccinations, and if not, to have folks tested. And these 4121 and 4221 identify vaccine and personnel and non-certified personnel requirements from the state that we have to uphold. Jason, anything else?
Do any board members, before I dive into approval of each of these, have questions about any of the required COVID-19 vaccination policies? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve new policy 4121, required COVID-19 vaccinations for certified personnel.
So moved.
Arnold first, thank you. Jen second. All in favor? That is unanimous, thank you. And I'm going to ask for a motion for a new policy 4221, required COVID-19 vaccinations for non-certified personnel. Is there a motion? Christy, thank you. Is there a second? Jennifer, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 10, we are up to reports from committees. Does the policy committee have anything in addition to report on at tonight's meeting?
No, not tonight. Our next meeting is in several weeks.
Wonderful, thank you. Operations committee, Mr. Del Ventura, is there anything that you want to report on that hasn't already been discussed this evening?
You know, I think we covered most of it. I will just highlight that we did review the COVID Relief Fund grant reporting, and kind of discussed exactly what funds were still available in those ESSER grants. And I just wanted to highlight the success of our dining program thus far, that we've been seeing. Just, you know, great communication that we're seeing to parents, a lot more participation by students. And overall, that is a line that has been difficult to see success over the last 2 years, but we really are starting to see it now. So that's it.
Terrific. Wonderful. Thank you. Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Committee. This committee has not met in a while, but I believe is due for a meeting. And I think we're going to, at that first meeting, vote on a chair for that meeting. So because Dr. Best was the prior chair.
We are scheduled to meet on the 24th of this month, and Dr. Seiler will be joining us at that meeting.
Wonderful. Okay. Any liaison to town committees have any additional reports that might be relevant to Board of Education? All right. And then Learn Board of Directors. Kristen, is there anything to report this month?
No, as sometimes happens, we seem to have lapped the Learn Board, so our meeting is Thursday.
That happens quite frequently. Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Thank you, everyone. That was quite a long agenda. We do have one item left, which is an opportunity for public questions. Is there anyone in the public that would like to pose a question to the board? If so, we ask that you put your name and address in the Q&A at the bottom of this Zoom box, and then we can invite you into the conversation.
Right now, Dr. Balistraci, nobody is waiting in that queue.
All right.
Oh, I apologize. We have Polly Reeder would like to comment. Kevin, could you please elevate Polly to a panelist?
You should be coming in.
Okay,
yep,
thank you.
Here she comes, thank you.
Hi, Polly. Oh, here we go. Hi, Polly, how are you?
Good, thank you. I don't think I had a chance to hit send on my address there, but thank you. And I'm going to try to be brief, of course, to stay within the time frame and given the late hour. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to raise mainly two items with regard to the current practices around with COVID in light of the current surge. I don't think if it weren't for the current surge right now, these things would not be such a problem. But number one, it's just really too much of a burden to have on children. And how are we to get any information other than a number at a school in terms of the cases that are positive? That just doesn't seem responsible or like good citizenship in terms of informing other people. If we could have some kind of simple emails like we're done last school year or whatnot, just something so that we as parents have some kind of idea if there's a positive case in our students' homeroom, in their class, or just on the bus, just some kind of idea, because that could give us a precious day or two, which could make a great difference in terms of other family members catching the virus or the from the child that's already been in contact. So that is number one. And number two is masking. The kids are working really hard. I think they're doing really great. But I think with the change to the 5-day change that we've had, having students come back or staff or anyone come back in after being out for 5 days, and then they're in school for their second 5 days, the CDC says they need to be well masked at all times. Someone sitting next to me eating lunch, my son in Baldwin this year has students eating around him without their masks 3 times a day, twice in the classroom. A lot of kids buy breakfast and eat it, while school's underway. And then a vast majority of his class eats morning snack. And he doesn't, but so kids are eating 3 times a day versus we know it's possible not to do that. And I'm only suggesting this really, I would prefer it for the whole year, but just to be realistic, and with the burdens and the stress on everyone, I'm suggesting during the surge, make a schedule shift. We know it can be done. We know that last year, my other son at Baldwin, they very, very, very rarely ever ate anything in the building. It can be done. We can have a shift in the academic schedule, and there are staff. It's I realize it's not great to shift things around, but this is going to make a difference in terms of, it makes a difference in terms of, we know with the numbers being so high, hospitalization of students, of staff, of family members. And we know that people are going to have long-term COVID symptoms from even mild cases. I don't think that is okay to just let that be a gamble and let kids sit and eat lunch right next to each other. Particularly, for my family situation, I don't have an elementary student any longer in Baldwin. That's less than half the kids are vaccinated. It's a totally different game than at Adams.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Yes, I think that's, and everyone has been doing such a fantastic job, and already had so much respect for the Guilford professional teaching staff and educators. But I just can't say enough positive. But I'm just asking, during this time frame, we know that we're sending people off to be sick with the way we're operating now, to be very seriously sick, possibly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the board with comments at this time?
There's nobody else in the queue, Dr. Balistraci.
Okay. I will note, and Dr. Freeman, I don't know if you want to add anything. I do want to make clear that, first of all, the 5-day return must be a return after a student or a staff member is fever-free for 24 hours and symptoms have been resolving. We are required to feed people in public schools, so we are balancing a very strict approach to masking at all other times, but do need to accommodate eating in schools. Likewise, I do believe, Dr. Freeman, you noted about the contact tracing that, and this is happening across schools in Connecticut. it has become incredibly difficult, challenging, not feasible to do it in a timely manner. But we are trying to keep the public informed with the reporting that we're doing online. And you noted that we are trying to, previously had been updating it weekly, but are trying to update it daily. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, Dr. Balistraci, I think that gets it. I would just say that I understand the concerns. They're two good points. It's not the first time that the points have been raised. I've heard them from other parents. I completely understand, and we'll keep working on it. There's a meeting at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning with statewide DPH. We're going to keep following the recommendations. These conversations are happening at a state level. We'll keep balancing as best we can. And you did a nice job summarizing why we find ourselves at this moment, and we'll keep paying attention to it. I appreciate the comments. Yep.
All right. With that, we have come to the close of our meeting. Thank you. It has been a longer one than we have had recently, but I think we received a tremendous amount of important information this evening around the budget. We continue to get updates in COVID-19 protocols. We've just heard Dr. Freeman note that discussions around protocols and addressing this surge happen on a continuous basis. So we will keep the public updated with any changes in the future. I will now, is there an additional? Oh no, that's an old one.
No,
okay.
no executive session.
Sorry, I got startled by seeing another Q&A. That's still from our last speaker. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting for this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Jennifer. Second, Noel, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us to the viewing public. We look forward to your interest as we continue budget conversations as well as our regular work. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.